From Broke to Chick-fil-A Operator, the Daniel Reyes story. Daniel Reyes used to measure his life in quiet disappointments that no one else could see. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind that made for good stories. Just the slow, steady kind that built up over time. Emails that were never answered. Interviews that felt promising but ended in silence. Bills that didn't quite get paid on time but somehow never stopped coming. He lived in a small apartment on the edge of San Antonio, the kind of place where everything technically worked, but nothing worked well. The refrigerator hummed too loud. The shower pressure changed without warning. The walls were thin enough that he knew his neighbor's schedule better than his own. On a shelf near the window sat a framed diploma in business administration. He had turned it face down months ago. It wasn't that he regretted getting it, it was that he didn't know what it meant anymore. At 32, Daniel had imagined something different, stability at least, direction. Instead, he bounced between jobs, warehouse shifts, delivery driving, short-term contracts that always ended just when he started to get comfortable. He wasn't lazy, that was the frustrating part. He just couldn't seem to get traction. One afternoon, after finishing a long shift unloading trucks, Daniel stopped at a Chick-fil-A. It wasn't a special decision. It was close, affordable, and consistent. He walked in, placed his order, and stepped aside to wait. At first, he wasn't paying attention, but something about the environment pulled his focus back. The line was long, but it moved quickly. Employees communicated constantly, but calmly. No shouting, no visible stress spilling over onto customers. "My pleasure," the cashier said as she handed someone their food. Daniel heard it again from another employee. Then again. He looked around more carefully. A manager moved between stations, offering guidance without pressure. When someone made a mistake, it was corrected immediately, but quietly. "Hey, no worries," the manager said to a younger employee who looked flustered. "Just reset and keep going." Daniel stood there longer than he needed to. He didn't fully understand why, but something about the place felt different from every other job he'd had. It felt intentional. 2 days later, he applied. He almost didn't. He stared at the application on his phone for a long time before submitting it. There was a part of him that resisted the idea. A part that said, "This isn't what you studied for. This isn't what you planned." But another part of him, the quieter, more honest part, said, "You need a reset." When he got the call for an interview, he kept his expectations low. He'd been through too many disappointments to get hopeful too quickly. The interview was simple, straightforward, but it was also different. They asked about work ethic, sure, availability, basic things, but they also asked questions he wasn't used to. How do you respond when things don't go your way? What does good service mean to you? Daniel answered honestly, not perfectly, just honestly. A few days later, he got the job. He started part-time at the front counter. The first week was rough. He forgot menu combinations. He rang up orders incorrectly. He struggled to keep pace during the lunch rush when everything seemed to happen at once. There were moments where he felt that familiar pressure rising, the urge to shut down, to withdraw, to assume he wasn't cut out for it. But something was different here. Instead of criticism, he got guidance. A trainer named Marcus stayed patient with him. "Don't try to be perfect," Marcus said during one hectic shift. "Just try to be a little better than yesterday." Daniel nodded, but he didn't fully believe it at first. Still, he kept showing up. He started arriving early, giving himself time to prepare mentally before the shift. He studied the menu at home. He paid attention, not just to what people did, but how they did it, how they handled stress, how they spoke to customers, how they supported each other. One evening, about 3 weeks in, the restaurant got slammed. The line stretched out the door. The kitchen fell slightly behind. Orders started stacking up. Daniel was on the front counter when a customer stepped forward, visibly irritated. "I've been waiting 10 minutes, the man said sharply. "What's going on here?" Daniel felt that familiar tension in his chest. For a split second, he thought about deflecting, about passing the problem to someone else. But instead, he took a breath. "I'm really sorry about the wait," he said. "We're backed up right now, but I'm going to check on your order and get it moving." The man paused. The tone shifted. Daniel walked back to the kitchen, tracked down the order, and made sure it was prioritized. When he returned with the food, the customer's frustration had softened. "Thanks," the man said. "It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a big moment, but it mattered." After the shift, Marcus pulled him aside. "You didn't avoid that situation," Marcus said. "You stepped into it. That's leadership." Daniel shook his head. "I'm just trying not to mess up." Marcus smiled. "That's how it starts." Over the next few months, Daniel improved steadily. Not perfectly, not all at once, but consistently. He became more confident on the register, faster during rushes, more comfortable interacting with customers. More importantly, he started helping others. New hires came in, just as overwhelmed as he had been. Daniel found himself repeating the same advice Marcus had given him. Don't try to be perfect, just improve. 6 months after he started, the manager called him into the office. "We'd like to move you into a shift leader role," she said. Daniel blinked. "Me?" She nodded. "You stay steady under pressure, you take responsibility, and people listen to you." It didn't feel real at first. He had spent so long feeling behind in life that the idea of moving forward, even in a small way, felt unfamiliar. But he accepted. The role came with more responsibility. Managing shifts, handling conflicts, keeping things running smoothly. There were harder days now, more pressure, more expectations. But Daniel found that he didn't shrink from it. He leaned into it. One night, after closing, he stayed behind to help clean. The store operator, James Carter, was finishing up some paperwork. Daniel had been thinking about something for weeks, and he finally decided to ask. "How did you get here?" Daniel said. James looked up. "You mean this?" he asked, gesturing around the restaurant. Daniel nodded. James leaned back slightly. "It's not like most franchises," he said. "You don't just buy your way in." He explained the process. The initial investment was relatively low compared to other franchise systems, but the selection process was intense. Thousands of applicants, very few chosen. "They're not looking for people with the most money," James said. "They're looking for people who can lead, who can develop others, and who can represent the brand the right way." Daniel listened carefully. For the first time, the idea didn't feel impossible. It felt difficult, but possible. He applied the following year. The application forced him to reflect deeply. It asked about his experiences, his failures, his leadership philosophy. It wasn't just a checklist, it was a mirror, he answered honestly. He answered honestly. About being stuck, about feeling lost, about finding structure and growth in a place he hadn't expected. Then he waited. Weeks passed, then months. Eventually, the email came. He didn't get selected. The disappointment hit harder than he expected. Not because he assumed he would get it, but because he had allowed himself to believe in the possibility. That night, sitting in his apartment, Daniel stared at the same wall he had stared out so many times before. For a moment, everything felt familiar again. The doubt, the frustration, the temptation to give up. But something had changed. He didn't quit. Instead, he went back to work the next day. He asked for feedback. He focused on improving his leadership. He invested more time into developing others. He stopped chasing the outcome and started focusing entirely on the process. Another year passed. During that time, something subtle but powerful happened. Daniel stopped seeing himself as someone trying to escape a bad situation. He started seeing himself as someone building something meaningful. When he applied again, it felt different. Not because the process had changed, but because he had. This time, he was invited to interviews, multiple rounds, deep conversations. They asked him about failure. He didn't try to hide his past. He talked about it openly. They asked him about leadership. He didn't give textbook answers. He gave real examples. They asked him why he wanted it. He paused before answering. "Because I know what it feels like to be overlooked," he said, "and I want to build something where people don't feel that way." Months later, he got the call. They offered him an operator position. For a moment, he didn't speak. All the years of frustration, doubt, and slow progress led to this. He accepted. He was assigned a location in a growing suburban area. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't guaranteed success, but it was his responsibility now. Running the restaurant was different from anything he had done before. He didn't own it in the traditional sense. He couldn't sell it. He wasn't building a chain. He was responsible for one store, one team, one community. So he focused on what mattered most: people. He remembered what it felt like to be unsure, to feel stuck, to need someone to believe in you. So he built his team with that in mind. He invested in training, encouraged growth, promoted from within. One employee, Tasha, came in part-time while raising 2 kids. Within a year, she became a shift leader. Another employee, Carlos, started in the kitchen with little confidence. Over time, he developed into a strong manager. Daniel didn't just run a restaurant, he built an environment. Years passed. The store performed well, but more importantly, the people within it grew. Eventually, corporate noticed. They asked Daniel to help mentor new operators. He didn't own multiple locations. That wasn't how the system worked. But his influence extended beyond his own store, and that mattered. One afternoon, years later, Daniel walked into another Chick-fil-A. He stood in line quietly. When he reached the counter, a young employee handed him his food. "My pleasure," she said. Daniel smiled. He saw himself in that moment. Not the version of himself that had everything figured out, but the version that was just starting to believe that things could change. As he walked out, he realized something simple. His life didn't change because of one opportunity. It changed because he kept showing up when it would have been easier not to. Because he improved when no one was watching. Because he stayed committed when results weren't immediate. Being down on your luck isn't permanent, but staying there can be. The difference is what you do next. Daniel didn't just get a chance. He became someone ready for it, and that made all the difference.